Hi everyone, welcome back. So last time we talked about communicating with students through announcements and email in Brightspace, and this time we're going to discuss grades. So there are a number of places you can find grades, a number of places you can look at progress, especially when you're assessing, and different ways that you can access assignments, discussions, quizzes, tests, things like that when you are giving grades. So I'm going to run through all of those different things. So let's get started. The first thing, pretty obviously, is the gradebook. So in the gradebook, here under grades, we can see the student's name. Here it's set up to see their final calculated grade both at the beginning and at the end. Now, one of the things that I love about Brightspace as opposed to Blackboard, a little bit of an upgrade, you notice that the students' names kind of travel with them. So you can see when you get like down here, you can still very easily see whose assignment is which. When you're setting up your grade book, you have a number of options, and I want to talk about those first, and then I'll get into how to actually go in and do the grading. First, you can check all of your things that you've done in your settings through this setup wizard. So it tells me I have a point system, I have automatically release final grade, drop ungraded items, give a percentage for the grading scheme, and display 2 decimal points. Let's say that I want to change some of these things. You can do it in the wizard, or you can click this little gear right here for settings. So just a few things. The grading details, you can do a points grade, you can do a grading scheme with a symbol, or you can also give a color. Now, for whatever reason, I think probably because the grading scheme isn't maybe set up in this sandbox, it's not showing me what that would look like. So you guys were just seeing like just the percentage, but I want to show you what it would look like a little bit differently. So here is a class that I'm currently in with all the students' names taken off and all their identifying information. You can kind of see this final calculated grade. It gives you the number of points that they're getting out of the number earned, and then it also has what they call in Brightspace the grading symbol, which is basically whatever letter grade they're currently getting. And then you can kind of see the number of points for each assignment because this is a points-based course. So that's basically what it would look like. When I come back into here, how many number of columns do I want the header to repeat in, etc. You can set all of those. I like to have the repeated final grade at the start, and I don't have an adjusted final grade here, so I don't need to check that. The reason that that's nice is that if you look, I'm going to open up that grades in another tab so we can kind of toggle back and forth a bit. So when we look at this, their final calculated grade is here at the beginning and it's over here at the end. So it's really nice to be able to get a quick shot right by the students. You know, we talked about how you can email the student and their advisor or their academic success coach right from here. So you can identify anybody who's kind of struggling, like this sample student right here. So I like to have that set as an option. Okay, when I come to my organization, save, organizing the units. You can display decimal points or you don't have to. You can show those both to yourself and to students if you want. So if you want to have the ability to round up, which I know we've had discussions about recently, you can definitely do that. On the students display, you can show them the points grade or the percentage. You can show them their grading scheme symbol, so that letter grade, and you can also have things colored so that it's kind of easy to have things that maybe they didn't do so well on kind of pop out. Or you can take that off as an option. I would say that at least have the grading scheme symbol here. make sure that that's checked, because students really do want to know what grade they're getting in our class. And we talked about this with equity for grading. It's difficult if they just have, especially for a points class, if they're just seeing the number of points, that doesn't really mean anything. So having the percentage and having the grading scheme symbol can be really helpful for them. You can also choose to display how final grade was calculated. We're going to talk about in a second, if you have a class that is weighted, that can be helpful for them as well. So your calculation options, you basically have those two options. Do you want the points or do you want the weighted? Really, what I like about this, I do think that it's easier to set up than Blackboard was. The weighting in Blackboard was quite, in my opinion, it was quite confusing and kind of difficult. So if you have things weighted, like say your assignments are 40% and your projects are 60%, you can do that. You can also have a formula. A formula basically means that within those weighted categories, each assignment counts for a certain number of points. So let's say instead of 50% here, I have like 10 points, 10 points, 30 points for assignment 3. But my assignments category as a whole is still 20% of the grade. So if that's how you set your class up, you can do that formula as well. I like the point system because it's, to me, for my purposes, it's a little bit easier. So I'm going to keep that and I'm going to press save. And then yes to continue. So once your gradebook options are all set up, you can save and then close that. I clicked the wrong button there. Oh, my one thing I forgot to mention in this settings is, I have to find it. It's really important. Okay, sorry guys. So yeah, it's here in calculations and it's underneath where we just were. So there's this option to drop ungraded items or treat ungraded items as a 0. Now, ungraded does not mean not turned in. It just means that you haven't graded it yet. If you check the treat ungraded items as a 0, here's what happens. I'm going to save that and then I'm going to go to my gradebook and I'm going to refresh. CJ went from an 80% down to a 34 because I haven't graded these quizzes yet, and they probably not even due. And there's a couple other items here, their first review, that I haven't gotten into to be able to grade, right? Again, these are hypothetical students in a sandbox, so not real. But if you check that, these all become 0s and it looks to the student like they have a 34 in the class or a 46 or a 9. So I really recommend making sure that you have drop ungraded items. Just basically means they're not calculated yet. And again, completely different than students not turning it in. So when we do that, they go back to this way more accurate representation of their current grade, 80%, 80%, 60%. The other thing you'll notice is that I did click to have things in different colors. I don't know how well that's showing up on this video, but some of the things where people were borderline or didn't pass are coming up in red or pink here, as opposed to like the B's are the light blue and then the A's are kind of the dark blue. So, the other thing that you can do here, you can hide columns if you want. So some people, for instance, maybe you don't want, like, I don't know, the quiz is showing yet. You can hide those. You can hide those if you want to hide them. The other thing about the gradebook is managing grades. So when we click on that, oh, sorry. Before I do that, I should say you can just collapse these if just for your purposes. Like, let's say you have tests here, but you haven't given tests. You can click that and it'll just kind of collapse smaller just for ease of viewing. You don't have to hide it completely because sometimes when you hide it, you forget it's there. At any rate, You might be asking, can I add assignments that are not necessarily in my course content? Yes, you can. So let's say that you have an assignment that's not necessarily linked to any of your modules. I mean, I don't always recommend doing that, but if you have that situation, here's how you do it. You go into Manage Grades. Here you can see all of their quizzes, their discussion, all of their assignments, and then those final calculated grades. You can edit these or hide them from users or enter grades right from here. Or you can click New and you can do a new item or a fully new category. So if you have, like, say, a test that you want to put in here, maybe you gave that in class and it's not online, then you could do that. If you have just one item, you can add that too. So let's add an item. And it gives you a lot of options: pass, fail, formula, calculated, etc. Here I'm just going to go with numeric. And I'm going to call it, let's say, quiz 4. And my short name, I'm going to keep that, quiz 4. Category, this is especially important if you have things that are weighted. So I'm going to click here, quizzes. If I want a description, I could add a description. So let's say in-class quiz from 422. Allow viewers to view the description, and maximum points is 10. You can exclude it from the final grade calculation. You can add it as a bonus, however you kind of want to do that. Sometimes you might want to have a low stakes thing that they just kind of did that you don't necessarily want as part of their final grade. That's fine too. And the grading scheme you can just leave as the default. So however you are grading, it'll go in there. You can also add a rubric if you have rubrics. We're going to talk about those in a different video. But for now, I'm just going to save and close. And when that pops up, you can see it's right there under my quizzes. So poetry terms, bonus quiz, and then here's quiz number 4. And then I can enter grades for it directly. So my students' names pop up and we'll say 10, 8, this person has not been doing well, and a 7 for Christy. Save and close. Yep. Okay. So that is it. That's another way that you can enter grades. So you can enter grades by clicking here and clicking enter grades as well. So let's say, yep, our sample student did not turn in this assignment. I'm going to give them a 0, save and close. Yes. And I'm forgetting right now whether I mentioned this, but one of the big features here is that if that student turned that assignment in and I went in to grade it, my grade would automatically go over that manual override grade. Huge improvement from what we had before. The only way that the manual override grade has stayed that I know of is if you're using an external learning tool. So if you have something from, say, like Pearson or Norton or whatever, that manual override, you might have to go in and manually fix it. But for the most part, if I give here, I'm going to enter grades and I'm going to give Amy a 0. Let's say I had given her a 0 and then she turned in her work. I have that 0 in. I'm going to click her assignment to grade it. Her assignment pops up automatically. And again, if we had turned it in, it would come under here, but I'm going to click on her assignment. And I'm going to go in here and using this rubric, I'm going to give her some grades. Looks like it auto-populates with some comments there for us. And then I would type something in here. probably more than what I'm putting in right now. And update. So this is for write your first review. Now I can toggle back and forth between other students' work to grade everybody in this module. But for right now, I'm just looking at Amy's to make sure that this has changed. So when I go back into the grades and I go over to Amy, here's her first review. That 0 has been replaced with a 17 automatically. I didn't have to do anything. It just came right up. So it's a really, really nice feature. So another feature in the gradebook is right here, viewing student progress. When I click this for Amy, her current grade comes up, the maximum final grade she could get, and the minimum. So this is really helpful for that student who's like, I know I didn't do well. Can I pass the class? There's 3 weeks left. This you can click on and it does the math for you. So you can say to them, look, you could pass the class. The maximum final grade you can actually get is a C+. And your minimum final grade, though, is like, a 40%. So it's really up to you at this point which direction you want to go. Or if they're like, can I get an A? And you can say, well, mathematically, the highest you can get is an 85.8, that can help aid in those conversations and maybe getting them back on track and kind of motivating them as well. So another place where you can find that is the class list. So we looked at this before when emailing students. Here I'm going to click CJ and I'm going to say view progress. And again, that same information pops up for CJ. So he's got the maximum final, the minimum final, and his current grade are all right there. So going back into the gradebook, just to summarize, you can see a student's current grade here at the beginning and also at the end. You can see each of their individual grades here, and it shows you whether or not they've turned them in through these little icons. If you have one that you have not seen, like maybe they submitted and then they resubmitted, it'll pop up with this little red dot, and that shows unread submission file. You can enter grades directly by clicking enter grades, or you can click on those icons to then go to the student's assignment and enter their grade. You can see their progress both here and on that the class list. The class progress as a whole is seen on this tab, class progress. So this is really nice when you are doing assessment to grab a screenshot of how everybody's doing in the class. It also has a similar feature in quizzes where you can view statistics there as well. Although I noticed here in our little sandbox course, we don't have any of those statistics, but in other places you will. So you can kind of see how people are doing in terms of their grades and all of that kind of thing in a really simple, easy way. How much content have they completed? Have they hit those objectives? And what scores have they received for their quizzes? So speaking of which, those are 3 other places where you can enter grades. If you go here to assignments, I just showed you guys kind of what this looks like, but you can click on the here in class poetry slam, and here you can click the students' assignments. Now, what I don't like is that it's not clear on that page who you've graded already and who you have not, but it does open up all of the submissions for you to click through, and if there are any people that you have not graded, you can do that. I'm going to go back to submissions here. Yeah, so even, there's no real indication here who's been graded and who has not. You can email students without submissions. I mentioned that in the other video, but that again is really, really helpful. So here, our sample student didn't submit, and I can email them right away. Everybody who didn't submit comes up blind carbon copy, so they can't see each other's information. Whoops. But by going back to the assignments, all of those assignments, it tells me how many new submissions I have, how many people completed it, how many I evaluated, and how many I actually published, because you can save your feedback as a draft. So this to me is the easier way to grade, rather than clicking here and then trying to click individual student submissions. Just clicking this number, we go into here. There's 2 that I have not graded yet. You click here to view their assignment. Now, if they've submitted multiple times, maybe a couple of them were the wrong files. We know that happens. Those submissions will come up right underneath with the newest on the top. So you can let students know that as well. It's not like Blackboard where they weren't in the same window and you had to click through and try to find stuff. It's a lot easier and a lot more streamlined. So here, I'm showing you without the student's information on it what this looks like. Submission 2 is at the top. This person put a comment in, Professor Hall, I had to revise my thesis statement. And then the first submission is down below. Now you can see that Turnitin score, and you can click. I can't right now, but you can click to look at that Turnitin similarity report before you grade. You can also, if we had Turnitin, you could make comments right in there as well for students to view. But going back to our little sandbox class here, here we have submission 1. The student has only submitted one particular assignment. I'm going to click that PDF and it'll open it up. A few things here, you can zoom in. You can search the document, rather. You can zoom in. You can move it around with the hand, however you want to do it. You can move to page 2 or page 1. You can write on here if you want, or type, however you want to do it. So if you have like a comment, you can type it right there for the student to kind of look at and see, much like you could with Blackboard. Then we open up our little rubric. The biggest thing here, I'm going to talk again about rubrics specifically in a little bit. This one's auto-populating some stuff. The biggest thing is that you don't want to mess with this overall score because it auto-populates. So unless you have a reason for overriding this grade, you want to make sure that you leave that alone. If you do, you can clear the override, but then you kind of have to go back in and fix things, and you can see it's still not quite doing the right thing here that I want it to do. So it gets a little bit tricky. So just be careful of that. Then you can type your comments here. Double check to make sure that the grade is the grade. It's really easy as well to not have that part of the rubric checked, although I think it should give us a little notification if I go to publish. Yep, not all the rubric criteria have been scored, so that's good to know. You can also attach links. You can upload a file. So if you, for example, make changes to a student's work, you can upload that file. If you want a web link, Google Drive document, OneDrive. You can also record audio for the students or record video. Sometimes that additional feedback, like in an online class, can add a personal touch. And again, that's something that you could do in Blackboard, but it took a really long time to upload the audio as a file. I know from trying it, and I know other people were using like a widget that they had to pay extra for, something like a voice recorder or something to that extent. So once you publish that grade, it automatically goes into the gradebook. I'm going to click back to assignments and discard my little sandbox. You can also grade students directly in discussions. So it looks like they've got this one. Here's it's set up a little bit differently because in discussions, if you click the discussion itself, you just go into the discussion to participate in it, which is great. We're going to have another video about discussions. But here I just want to show you how to grade. Basically, you go here, assess topic, and then you click on the individual student submission, and it opens up exactly like the assignments, which is really nice. You're toggling up here back and forth between individuals. If you have a rubric, it comes up here. You can give them a score, make sure their overall score doesn't get overridden. Type here in the box if you want and click update. You can also retract student grades by clicking here to retract. Sometimes that's helpful if you have a rubric. Any changes you make are seen by the students automatically. So sometimes it's helpful to retract before you republish their grade. Especially if like they submitted the wrong file or they plagiarized and you let them have another chance. So for those things. Quizzes right here. So sometimes quizzes can be set up to automatically grade. I don't know whether they've set things up for us here or not. It looks like there are no attempts, at least for this quiz. So what basically you would do is go here, you click grade to go into grade it, and then if there were attempts, you could do those attempts. It would presumably look kind of like discussions or assignments. I can't go into that with my other class without you guys kind of seeing student names, so I'm not going to do that right now. But basically, to kind of recap, you can look at a student's progress. Sorry about that, guys. So to recap, you can see the full class progress using class progress. You can see everyone's grades and individual progress using the grades feature. You can also look at their grades and their individual progress using the class list and that drop-down feature to click view progress. And you can enter grades a number of ways, individually through assignments, discussions, and quizzes, or using that grades tab, either to enter things manually or to click into the assignment or the discussion in question and again grade it right in there. So that's it. I hope that this was helpful. The next time we're going to talk about how to set up those rubrics, and hopefully that'll help as well. Thanks, everyone.